everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm reviewing the new collection from KKW Beauty. As you guys know, she just launched the Classic 2 palette and 11 new glosses. These are full-size glosses, which I will get into the glosses and all of that later on in the video, but let's first talk about the palette. So this palette retails for $45 and it's kind of a cool tone moment, which is really fun. If you guys are new to my channel, I'm gonna say it right now, this has been one of my absolute favorite palettes. This is the original Classic palette. When this was launched last August, I remember it was right before I was getting ready to go on vacation, and I took it on vacation with me and I used it the entire time and I was just head over heels in love. This has actually been one of my favorite palettes just for those everyday looks. I love all the shades in here. They all blend beautifully, and it's one of my dependable palettes. It's one of those palettes that I always reach for when I need something quick and dependable, and it's just always been one of my favorites. When I heard about this beautiful cool tone Classic 2, you guys all heard me raving about it. I was really excited about it. I actually have a lot to say about this palette, so I will get into that later on in the video. But like I said, this palette retails for $45 on the KKW Beauty website. So these are the actual glosses that I have already in my collection from KKW Beauty. I've just always really loved her glosses, and then I bought 11 more. But truthfully, I bought all 11 so that I could do the review and show you guys all of the shades. I try all of them on in the video. I swatch them all so you guys can see the colors and the undertones. I definitely don't think that anybody needs this many glosses, but you know, these were kind of my personal collection. My favorite shade was Lust and Juicy. Juicy and Lust were my favorite shades. I'm not sure if they're still available, but they're kind of like a beautiful peachy pink. Now the old glosses I think retail for $12. These are $20 each, but these are a little bit bigger, obviously. The new ones have 4.8 grams, which is 0.17 ounces. The old ones have 0.12 ounces, which is 3.5 grams. So this is the size comparison. The new formula is also inspired by the nude cream lipsticks, which I have several of those shades. If you guys are interested in any of the cream lipstick shades, I will leave a link up here in the iCards and also in the description box down below, basically going through my entire KKW Beauty lip collection, showing you guys what they all look like, swatching them all for you so you guys can see, you know, what the lipsticks look like. But the new glosses are packed with Maxi Lip, and it's a natural peptide that moisturizes the lips and makes them more defined using collagen, hyaluronic acid, along with vitamin E to promote cell turnover and regeneration, providing extra moisture and nourishment to the lips. So in the video, I'm going to be doing 3 different eyeshadow looks using the Classic palette, and then I will go through and try on all the glosses. I will also do palette comparisons where I compare and swatch the palette next to some of the other palettes that I have in my collection, and then we'll jump into my final thoughts. And also I will leave timestamps in the description box down below to make it easy to kind of jump ahead to the parts that you're most interested in. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into the 3 eyeshadow looks, and I will see you guys all in my final thoughts. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the comparisons of this palette next to some of the other palettes. Now, the first image is actually the palette swatched itself. I wanted just to upload this image so you guys could see what the palette looks like swatched. The next image is this palette swatched next to the original classic palette. So in case you have the original classic palette, you will know how they will pair well together, and I think it will make a great palette, you know, to combine both of the palettes together. Next up, I compared it to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Sultry palette. I don't know if you can get this palette anymore, but this palette has been on sale a ton of times. I don't know if they're trying to discontinue it. Maybe they already have, but this one was launched, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, but it's definitely a cool tone palette. So I wanted to compare this palette to the new Classic 2 because I feel like they both have that cool tone moment. And as you can see, there are some similar shades in both of these palettes. I was only able to find 5 shades, but those 5, you know, they're comparable. I wouldn't say they're anywhere near exact, but those were the only shades that I could find that were close to being kind of similar. So when I first saw this Classic 2 palette, the palette that popped in my head was this NARS Skin Deep palette. So if you guys have been with me for a while, you know that this has been one of my absolute favorite palettes. Definitely my top 10 palette. And I don't think you can get this anymore, but I love this palette. I love the formula. I love the shimmer shades in here. I love the matte shades. Just overall, one of my favorite cool tone palettes. And when I first saw the Classic 2, this is the palette that I thought of. So up here on the screen is the image that I took of these shades compared next to the Skin Deep. Very similar. In my opinion, if you have the Skin Deep palette, you probably don't need this Classic 2 palette. Even though the shades are not exact, I think you could get similar looks with both of those palettes. Now, maybe if you missed out on the Skin Deep palette, maybe, you know, you could pick up this palette because it is similar. The next palette I decided to compare it to is the Scott Barnes Natural palette. So again, this has been one of my favorite palettes, and even though when you look at it, you don't see a lot of cool tone shades in here, there are some cool tone shades. So I wanted to pull it and, you know, swatch it next to this Classic 2, and there are definite similarities, like almost exact shades, which is really interesting. So I kind of feel like if you already have the Scott Barnes palette, this natural palette, I don't think you need this Classic 2. There are definite similarities between these two palettes. So that is the palette comparisons. Let's go ahead and jump straight into my final thoughts. Okay, so I'm gonna first talk about the glosses first. I didn't really like number 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. I didn't start liking these glosses until I reached nude 3 on my skin tone. I just felt like they were too light, and it's almost like when you try to put really light glosses on your lips, it almost makes it look weird and almost transparent in some spots. I don't know how to explain it, but I just wasn't really a fan of the lighter tones. I think I like the glosses from nude 3 on, especially nude 5, which is what I'm wearing right now. And I think nude 5 is really, really beautiful, especially for this eyeshadow look. I definitely don't think you need all of them. One of them is doable, or maybe 2 of them. You definitely don't need all of them. I only bought all of them so that I could review. Well, kind of, whatever. I like these glosses. I think they're really beautiful, and I'm glad I have them in my collection. Let's get into my thoughts about this palette. I'm gonna put up the image of the palette on the screen right now. If you'll notice the 2 tan shades in the middle, they look exactly the same. I don't understand why they're even in this palette. The shadows that I'm talking about are these 2, this one and this one. They're so similar. Yes, they do have a different undertone. So this one's like a peachy and this one's more of a tan, but the problem is you gotta have light or fair skin for those shades to be different. If you have like, you know, a light, medium, or deeper skin, you're not going to notice the difference. Probably not even going to show up on your skin because they barely showed up on mine on a medium golden undertone. So I feel like it was a complete waste to have these 2 shades that were so similar. Now, if they were a little bit darker, then I could see, because if they were a little bit darker, then a wide variety of skin tones could use it. This palette only has 10 shades. It didn't need 2 shades that were so similar, especially that light. Now, don't get me wrong, they're buildable. I was able to kind of build it and play around, but I got kind of bored with trying to build it, and I just moved on to a darker shade. Now, I love this shade, and I'm really, really glad that they put this shade in the palette, only because sometimes when you're using the gray tones, it can get kind of dusty and muddy quick, but a shade like this will kind of bring them to life and make them look a little bit more rich in tone. So I'm really glad that they introduced a shade like this in the palette. The other two shades that I don't think really needed to be in this palette because they're so similar are these two. Yes, they have a different undertone. Yes, they're not exactly the same shade, but when you put them on the eye, you really are not going to be able to tell the difference. And then when I say that, if I put this on this eye and this on this eye, you would never know I was wearing two different shades. They're different, but they're similar enough to not make that much of a difference on the eye. I felt like there are 4 out of 10 shades in this palette, in my personal opinion, that are kind of a waste. When you have a palette that only has 10 shades, you really need to make every single shade count. The other thing that it's missing is it doesn't have anything for an inner corner. Now, I know that that's probably, you know, not necessity for a lot of people, but I did have to go into the classic palette and grab that first shade, which is one of my favorite inner corner highlights. But there's nothing in this palette to put in an inner corner. And because they wasted, you know, these two shades and these two shades, those could have been spots for something like that. Because if you look at the Classic 2, all of the shades are completely different. Nothing is even remotely the same. Maybe these two, but not necessarily. This is an all over different palette. You have all these different shades that you can pull and make what you need. There's nothing that's the same. This is a lighter copper, and this is like a really rich, bold copper. So they're similar, but they're different. So they don't really look the same when you put them on the eye. I would have preferred to not have one of these shades and then have this shade a little bit darker, more like a transition shade, and these two something different. I don't know. It could have been different. Now, let me say this. This is a beautiful shade. This is such a beautiful, like, gray metallic shade, and it kind of reminded me of the silver screen shade in the Scott Barnes palette, this one right here. It does have that beautiful reflective gray. It's just a beautiful shade. So I love that they put that shade in here, but I would have loved like a beautiful, like, white, like a shimmer white in this palette. I think a shimmer white would have been beautiful. I pretty much have all of KKW Beauty's palettes except for the matte shade, the matte palettes. I don't have any of the solid matte palettes, but I have all of her other palettes. I love her formula. I think her formula is very good. I did not have any issues blending any of these shades out, and I will say grays are some of the harder shades to create. They did a great job creating the gray tones in this palette. Like, this blends beautifully. It blends like a dream. So I have nothing, not even remotely negative to say about the formula. It's just the choices that they made to put these colors in this palette is my issue. I think you already have majority of these shades in your collection. If you have any cool tone palettes in your collection, I think you probably already have it. And I love the classic palette, and so I was really excited about it. But now that I have it, I feel like you can create the same type of looks with probably palettes that you already have. So those are my thoughts on it. Again, I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I will see you guys right back here in my next video, and I love you all so much. Bye.